Welcome back, fellow astrologers, to another episode, Astrologer's Keyring Fundamental Series. In this video, D11, we'll be talking about Pluto the Transformer. First, we'll go over a little bit about how Pluto fits in astrology. Then we'll come down here and talk about some of these interactive links that are on all of our pages. Then we'll go back and go over the actual chart details and explain some more about how these details work before we go over to the key ring and see how they all link up. Afterwards, we'll come back and touch a little bit on these planetary dignities. Afterwards, we'll come back and go over these key words. So, Pluto is the planet of power, death, rebirth, and transformation. It governs the subconscious forces that drive evolution, both personal and collective. Though slow-moving and subtle, Pluto's influence is profound. It rules cycles of destruction and regeneration, deep psychological growth, and hidden truths. Pluto shows where we face fear, control, or obsession, and how we eventually reclaim our power. In mythology, Pluto ruled the underworld, making this planet symbolic of all that is buried, taboo, or primal. When embraced, Pluto brings healing and empowerment. When resisted, it can manifest as fear, manipulation, or crisis. Okay, that's a cool little break-in to Pluto. Pluto is for sure the planet of death and rebirth. It actually is very connected to Scorpio and the old traditional signs where you talk about the phoenix or the eagle, which is what it was before when Scorpio took over for the placement in the zodiac. But it is the planet that is the master of entropy. It is death and rebirth. It is fate. Now, again, it's a generational planet. Like it says right here, it's one of the outer planets, so it's generational, and that means it's going to have its flow through time a lot slower, because when it comes to Pluto, Pluto takes anywhere from 12 to 30 years to go through just one sign. And that's because of its really eccentric orbit. Sometimes it'll be a little bit closer to the sun, sometimes a little bit farther out. When it's farther out, it takes that 30 years. When it's closer up, it takes closer to 12 years. Right now, we're in one of the 20-year cycles, and it looks like it's speeding up. I'm going to have to double check that. I haven't actually looked at the chart to tell whether it's leaving or coming. So as an astrologer, I guess that's something I got to research myself. One thing Pluto teaches us for sure is there's definitely much more to astrology to learn than we can ever learn in just this one lifetime. It'd be amazing if we could live hundreds of years and see how these planets actually happen, and maybe get to see a Pluto return at 250 years, like our nation, which is reaching their Pluto return right now, since we're only a couple of years away from the actual 250th anniversary of America. And yes, even advanced astrologers will look at the births of nations and compare them with transit charts. Some of the masters I learned from some 20, 30 years ago were doing that in group meetings once upon a time. And if you get advanced enough in astrology, maybe you are. Maybe you are one of those people that go to these meetings like the NCGR. You actually get to hear what some of these wise old sages have to say. But yes, let's talk real quick about these actual links. Every one of our pages has a link. You can see right here, this link takes you to Pluto in Google. And when we're going to research, we're going to come back this later. We're going to click on this link and look at what Google has to say. All our other links down here have those too. As you see right here, the numbered and letter ones have links to YouTube, where we actually do our videos on these, the video series talking about these pages just like this one. So now, let's go over these chart details and talk a little bit how it links. So Pluto is definitely the final of the outer planets, and yes, as astrologers, we consider it a planet because Pluto's a serious planet. It really handles a lot about death and rebirth. Now, it's interesting, depending on where it shows up in your chart, it can really flavor some things. And that's not just in the sign, but also what house, because your houses are always changing much, much faster than the signs Pluto is traveling through. But yeah, we'll talk about that more in the houses when we get into the next series, in the E series about houses. So right here, what does Pluto symbolize? Power, transformation, death, and rebirth, and control, which is true, that it does symbolize a lot of those things. Its ruling sign is Scorpio. Now, we had mentioned that earlier. Scorpio used to be the Phoenix, and that's how it shares all this along with the corresponding house, the 8th house, which is the house of transformation. And then we go over here and see, right here, here's the 8th house. You can see it's Scorpio, the 8th house, and Pluto. Used to be Mars. And we talked about Mars over here. It used to be Mars, but now it is Pluto, since we found Pluto in 1930, I believe. And yes, that is a water fixed house sign and planet. As you go down here, you can see this is how it connects on the key ring as well. It's a planet of transformation, Scorpio, Pluto, and once upon a time Mars, but no longer water and fixed. As per always, I like to go over and talk about dignities. The planet Pluto is the last planet to have dignities. Planet or luminary, as I should say. None of the points of power have dignities, and the ascendant doesn't have a dignity either. I touched about that earlier in D1 when I mentioned the ascendant. It doesn't have any dignities, but the rest of the luminaries and the planets all do. In this case, the exalted position, which is one of the beneficial positions, is Aries. The ruler is Scorpio. So that's the ruling sign. These two are the signs that are more advantageous for Pluto, where the detriment and the fall, the detriment is Taurus. The detriment is always the polar opposite of whatever the ruler is, and the fall is always the polar opposite of whatever the exalted position. So in this case, Taurus will be the detriment, opposite of Scorpio, and Libra will be the opposite of Aries for the fall position. Now, it doesn't mean that, your life's over with if your sign falls in one of these two. I was born with Libra, with Pluto in Libra, and it just really talked about how my generation was. But as per always, depending on where things fall, you're probably going to find more things going on with aspects and its position in your houses than you will with the signs that they're in, when it comes to these actual outer planets and how they affect your chart. Not so much the signs. The signs talk about what's happening in the generation, where they land on your transits to other planets, and the actual houses. That's where the big ticket is, and that's when we'll talk about that later on in the houses. Now, every time we talk about a planet house sign or something like that, we want to mention some keywords or interesting points of interest about the actual topic on the page. In this case, we're going to talk about the general keywords, the positive traits, and the negative traits for Pluto itself. We want to keep it balanced so that you get a fair aspect of what the good side and bad side is, and we don't color code it or candy code it with just the shiny happy stuff. You get some of the raw stuff too. You might notice that some of these are similar to other things, but that's probably because they share some qualities with other stuff we've talked about. So let's go ahead and read those real quick. General traits: power, rebirth, shadow, depth, evolution, and regeneration. Positive traits: empowered, intense, insightful, fearless, transformative, healing, and focused. Negative traits: controlling, obsessive, manipulative, destructive, secretive, and paranoid. These are some awesome keywords that really kind of hit it on the head. And I think this has been a really good touch on how Pluto affects things in astrology. And I think this kind of sums up our topic for the day. So just remember to try to tune in next time when we go to D12, where we're going to be talking about the North and South Node. We're going to step past the planets and the luminaries, and we're going to start talking about the points of interest. And the North and South Node are your actual path of destiny. We'll start to talk about how these points of interest work in astrological charts. We hope you have enjoyed this video from our Astrology Keyring series. If you like the content, please like, follow, and share with your friends. Thank you for watching and have a blessed journey.